Since President-elect Donald Trump announced Tulsi Gabbard as his nominee to be the Director of National Intelligence, the left has been throwing daggers at her in the mainstream media as well. As I mentioned during my radar earlier in the show, Democrats have a bullseye on Gabbard's back. Senator Tammy Duckworth accused her of being compromised, and Senator Elizabeth Warren called her, quote, a Russian asset, as did many others in liberal media. Journalist Michael Shellenberger makes the case that these attacks are counterproductive.
He wrote on X, Trump's nominee for Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, is a threat to national security, say the media and government officials. She's not, and no one has presented any evidence to the contrary. The real threat to our security and freedom comes from our rogue intelligence community. Tesla CEO Elon Musk responded to Shellenberger on X, writing 100.
Joining us now to discuss is journalist and friend of the show, Michael Shellenberger. So nice to see you again.
Good to be with you, Robbie.
So is this how mainstream media institutions and many political figures are going to respond to a figure like Tulsi Gabbard, who is, outside the traditional intelligence community paradigms, by saying that if you disagree with them, or if you've at all echoed or said there's some validity to what a foreign government or the Russian government has said about a foreign policy issue, that makes you what, a deep cover Russian agent? Maybe she was like the Black Widow character from Marvel, maybe being trained as a Russian assassin from birth, something like that?
Yeah. Well, I think it's really interesting. I think that this shift of the Democrats embracing basically Russophobia, which really starts in 2016 when the intelligence community claims that Trump was and his associates were somehow compromised by the Russians. Of course, that became Russiagate. That appeared to have been really just a campaign dirty trick that has now turned into a sort of longstanding framing by the Democrats of Republicans. It's odd because it's traditionally a right-wing attack on the left, of course, going all the way back to McCarthyism. I mean, you see in Tulsi Gabbard somebody who has basically your basic kind of progressive Democrat views, from the Barack Obama era. I don't see a huge number of differences. I mean, obviously, after he came into power, Obama was involved in Arab Spring and the Syrian war, which he's also a controversy part of. But as the New York Times notes, there's never been any shred of evidence that she's ever been compromised. It's just rhetorical at this point. They've accused her of spreading misinformation on things like supporting biolabs in Ukraine. Well, the U.S. Department of Defense did help the Ukrainians with biolab safety. Certainly, she met with Assad, the head of Syria. That's controversial. On the other hand, I think the mood of the country right now is we're very tired of foreign wars. I think she reflects what a lot of Americans want, which is a negotiated end to the situation in Ukraine, negotiation to the end of the Israel-Palestine conflict. So I see in Tulsi Gabbard somebody who has views that are pretty solidly within the liberal side of the political spectrum, but just because of the fact that she's joined the Trump administration, wants to join the Trump administration, has opened herself up to these McCarthyite attacks on her around Russia.
Let me push back on one element of that, Michael, because I do on one hand take the point about the McCarthyism, the idea of smearing people who are simply expressing unorthodox or unapproved foreign policy ideas. But in relation to Gabbard's views on the Syrian civil war, I mean, it doesn't seem to me fair, with all due respect, to say that those are kind of Obama-era Democratic views. I mean, she takes the view, as I understand it, that the people opposed to Bashar al-Assad are overwhelmingly Islamist radicals, and therefore it is quite justified for Russia to weigh in on I'll get this right yet, Russia to weigh in on Assad's side. I mean, that's not what Obama believed, right?
No, for sure. And I should say that I'm really referring to Obama, the candidate in 2008. Obviously, he engaged in the Arab Spring and the Syrian conflict. And if she said that if she reduced the opponents of Assad to just radical Islamicists, I don't agree with that. I'm sure she said other things I don't agree with and that we all might disagree with. I've certainly said things that I don't agree with in the past, particularly around foreign policy in my younger days. But I just think we're all a little bit, older now, a little bit more grown up. I think that Gabbard is somebody that we need to take a strong role in cleaning up the intelligence community. There's just been 50 years since the last time we had a proper house cleaning of the intelligence community. Since then, we have had the intelligence community involved in creating a censorship industrial complex, involved in creating a Russia collusion hoax around a sitting president. We've had the intelligence community involved in a disinformation campaign around the Hunter Biden laptop, involved both the FBI and CIA. I think there's been a lot of concern that Trump would come in and want revenge. I don't need revenge. I think we need truth and reconciliation. But you do need a character who is established for independence from the intelligence community, but also who does have strong national security bona fides. I mean, we should keep in mind that she's been a Army Reserve officer for a couple of decades, I believe. And so someone that's not soft on terrorism by any means, advocated going after ISIS, which we did. So I just think with Gabbard, she's just been framed as kind of somewhere like a horseshoe, far left, far right person. But I think that her views are pretty well within the mainstream and is a strong character that I think the country needs right now to kind of clean up the intelligence community and restore confidence in the intelligence and security agencies.
Shifting gears a bit, wanted to ask you about another subject. I know you were in Australia recently. You were down under fighting against some social media censorship legislation there that I believe had an interesting age verification aspect. This is a topic I'm very interested to delve into further because while I absolutely understand the concerns many families might have about social media usage, or particularly excessive social media usage, among young people. We have to keep in mind that any kind of like age verification system is, giving license to the government to then track who's visiting. I mean, there's no way to restrict that to just young people. That'd be everybody having to hand in their IDs to travel to websites, which seems like a very dangerous, slippery slope to head down. Tell us more about the work you were doing there.
Sure. Well, I mean, the good news is that the censorship legislation that the Australians were considering has been defeated. The government withdrew it after a significant number of parties, including all of the swing voters in the Senate. They're called crossbenchers because they're not part of the big party. So that's gone and defeated, which is a wonderful victory. At the same time, on the heels of it comes this social media ban on people under the age of 16. I should say, as a father of two Zoomers that grew up with too much social media, I do agree with the need to restrict social media. I agree with Jonathan Haidt's analysis that social media has contributed to a significant amount of anxiety, in particular that fishbowl effect. At the same time, Jonathan Haidt, in particular, has focused on phone-free classrooms and also around creating parent groups where the parents agree to limit social media for the kids. In Australia, I heard about a proposal to actually give children and adolescents special kinds of smartphones that don't have social media on them, but allow for some texting and some phone calls. I think that we underestimate the importance of social norms. There's a lot of things, a lot of laws in our society that it's really hard to enforce with the police, or that you don't want to because it actually creates more harms, but you might still have a prohibition on it. The concern now in Australia is that they're using this under 16 age ban to create digital IDs, which is something that the World Economic Forum has famously championed. It's become the source of endless conspiracy theories, but nonetheless is a real possibility. And yesterday, Senator Matt Canavan in Australia confirmed in his interrogation of the government that the e-safety commissioner, who's an American, by the way, that she could implement a digital IDs under this bill. So they're trying to get that taken out right now. But this is one of the things that we've seen, Robbie, that is so concerning, is that we'll see governments around the world, they try to hide their censorship programs inside of a cybersecurity initiative. And now they're trying to hide basically digital monitoring, digital IDs, the potential for social credit and something to kind of reward good speech and punish bad speech online. They're trying to sort of hide that in a social media ban for kids. I think we have to be vigilant to it. I think there's just other ways to deal with this problem than making everybody have to have a digital ID or to end anonymity online altogether.
Yeah, I very much agree with that. And some of those suggestions you mentioned there, right? It doesn't have to be a government initiative or certainly a criminal issue every time you want to modify human behavior somewhat. Like, yeah, having phone time in schools, in classrooms being limited sounds totally sane to me. Like, it's the phone has as much capabilities is like the Game Boy. Of course, you're not going to let like a Game Boy be in the students using it when they're supposed to be learning. Does it need to be a government criminal enterprise? No, you can just create environments or incentivize that kind of thing. I think is so smart without exactly giving governments the tools to do massive screening or surveillance or anything of that nature. Michael Shellenberger, thank you for fighting the good fight. We'll have you back soon. Always a pleasure.
Good to be with you.